it was fall of 2021 where I had 8 boys in my class and 3 girls. And then out of that came the second grade frat and second grade for sorority. So like one day, all 3 of my girls were gone and it was just me and the boys walking down the hallway. And another teacher made a comment like, "Oh, it looks like you guys are a fraternity." And so I was like, all right, we got to come up with a frat name. And so I sat down with my boys and I was like, all right, what are some things you guys like? They're like, well, pizza and monster trucks. And so out of that came Delta Pizza Monster Trucks. And then the girls was Kappa Rainbow Unicorn. And so like I would come up with like, oh, it's rush week at Delta Pizza Monster Truck. Like we're hitting the root beer hard or something like that.
Welcome back, friends, to Studio P, aka my dining room. Today, I'm sitting with a guest who drove all the way down from Hayward, Wisconsin, one of my favorite little small towns that seems a lot bigger than it is when you get there in the summer based on how many people are visiting. Today, my guest is an author, he's a father, he's a teacher, he's a content creator. Welcome to the show, the Northern Nerd, aka, well, your actual name's Dalton Hessel.
It is, yes.
Dude,
thanks for having me.
Yeah, dude, thank you for driving down. This was, hour and a half?
Yeah.
A little more than that, maybe.
Yeah, just about. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, cool. So, who are you and what are you passionate about?
I am Dalton Hessel. I'm the Northern Nerd. I'm passionate about all things Hayward. It's kind of what I geek out about the most.
What's the origin story of the Northern Nerd name? You were in college and you wanted to make a blog or something? What's the story behind it?
Yeah, so it all kind of started, it was April, my senior year at UWEC, and I was sitting there and it was kind of a snowy Saturday and I was like, I want to have something where I can make content and, just get it out there in the world and give myself a platform. And so I came up with the idea of the Northern Nerd because we all have stuff that we are like nerds about. And I'm a nerd about Northern Wisconsin and my hometown of Hayward. So I was like, all right, well, this is just a no-brainer to go with that. And so I would run back and forth with one of my roommates and would just show him like, hey, do you think this looks cool? And he's like, yeah, that looks great. And he was just playing Rocket League. And then I would go back to my room, work for a little bit, come back to him. He's like, yeah, keep going. So I think like having that initial response from my roommate was helpful to kind of fuel that fire. And then I've been going on it for 6 years now. So
what was the thing that you were making at first? Like, was it a blog or was it like, what kind of content were you showing your roommate that he was like, that looks good?
Yeah, it was a website. So I was just setting something up on Wix, kind of creating my own website because I wanted to post a bunch of my different writings and stuff like that. So a lot of my writings back in college were like geared towards my small town and appreciation for it, like 25 signs, that you're from a small town kind of deal.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Have you always been into writing? Because writing was like my least favorite thing ever and still is. I'm so bad at it.
Oh, man. Yeah. I would say, yeah, ever since probably middle school, I've been into writing.
Yeah. For me, it's like I can read a room and I can see if somebody's like, they didn't like understand what I just said, so I can understand when to repeat it. Like I can kind of navigate a conversation, but when it's writing, I can't see how someone's reacting to what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's just like impossible. Like I can't read somebody's mind. I don't know how they're going to perceive this when they read it. So when I was in college, I like worked so hard. I was like, I'm going to get straight A's for the first time in my life because my sister has a doctorate degree and I was like the failure kid.
Oh, geez.
And I tried so hard, aced calculus, but I got a B+ in college writing. And I was so bummed, like trying to explain to my teacher, like, I'm trying to do everything and I can't do it. Help me. And she was like, B+ is good. And I'm like, not good enough for my parents.
Right.
So anyway, so that's like my disdain still for writing at this point. So what did you go to college for? Teaching?
Yeah. So I went for elementary education and then minored in English. But I also, at the time, before I went to college, I wanted to be in journalism as well. And so when it came time to pick a major, I was like, well, I could see myself, I want to be somebody's Mr. Feeny is kind of what I've always said. So,
Boy Meets World.
Yeah, definitely. So then I went into teaching instead, but then still was able to do journalism through working at TV10 in college. So
you don't still work for TV10?
I don't.
Yeah, okay. So that was like an internship, or how long did you work for the TV station?
It was sophomore year through senior year.
Now this is a story all about how my life got turned upside down, and I'd like to take a minute, just sit right there, tell you how I became the prince of a town called the Clay.
So we would do like play-by-play for the football games, basketball games, stuff like that.
Sure. And then you got, well, okay, pause. Did you have a huge crush on Topanga like the rest of us?
Oh, for sure.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Because they rebooted the show, right? It's like there's like Boy Meets Girl and it's Corey and Topanga, the same actors?
Yeah, they're the parents, I believe. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think...
Dope.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Hayward. So why you grew up in Hayward or just outside of Hayward? Because Hayward only has what, like 5,000 people?
2,500 people.
Okay, it's because there's 5,000 people any given Saturday in the summer, so it seems
for sure
like a lot bigger. Were you like in the town, or were you out on the kind of outskirts?
So I grew up.
Outskirts. That's just in the woods, really.
Right.
Yeah.
I grew up like, I don't know, like 3 minutes out of town. But still, yeah, I grew up in Hayward. Graduated from there and then went to college in Eau Claire, and then always wanted to come back. That was always part of the plan, was to come back and teach in Hayward.
Because you came to Eau Claire and you're like, this is way too crowded, or why'd you want to go back to Hayward?
I just always loved my like small town life. Like, not that I didn't appreciate Eau Claire and everything that it had to offer, but I just always found my way to go back there.
What's the benefit of living in a small town? Like, what are the major reasons why? Like, I could say I go to LA. I don't love it because I think it smells bad. It's dirty. It doesn't feel safe. It doesn't feel welcoming. There's like limitless opportunity, but it's just too gnarly, you know, versus here, it's like there's trees everywhere. Like everything just smells good unless you go by the paper mill. But like generally speaking, it smells good. It's safe. My kids ride around the block, but I still have all of the things that I need readily available. Minneapolis, where if you want to see Taylor Swift or anybody, is only an hour away. Like for me, that's why Eau Claire is like ideal. Hayward, I love it. My dad has a cabin, lives up there. So in the summer, we would go to Hayward for groceries and stuff. My mom was a teacher, actually.
Okay.
So I lived up there and went to Hayward a lot, and it's awesome. But for me, it would be a lack of like enough opportunity, and it's too far away from things.
Yeah, I totally get that. What I like the most is just like unplugging and just being able to be out in the wilderness as much as possible. So whether that's hunting or going for a walk, or doing some hiking and things like that. And I think although we don't have like a Target or a Costco or all those different entertainment things. Yeah, we have Walmart. That's about it. That's all we can hang our hat on. But what I really love is just the community that I've found there. Just the people and the things that I can get involved in, whether it's coaching the JV baseball team or helping out at a town festival, and just really getting to know my neighbors. Not that you can't have that in a town like Eau Claire, but to me, it was just the place that I grew up in, and I always just wanted to come back to that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different level of like knowing your neighbor somewhere like that. You know what I mean? I actually kind of like could equate it to similar to like a skateboarding community. So like in this town, I owned the skate shop for a little over 10 years, so I kind of knew everybody. But people would come to this town and say, hey, what's the skate scene like? And well, for a long time, we had one skate park. Said, well, everyone gets along. And it's because there's one place. If you don't get along, it's really awkward and sucks. You feel like you can't go places. So I feel like people very intentionally try to get along like all the time, because you know you're going to see this person forever. Like people that, put it this way, my neighbors, because I bought this house for my dad, are the same people from when I was a little kid. Like my neighbor who lives kitty corner behind me built this house.
Oh, wow.
And like my parents bought it when I was 2. I used to play with his kids. You know what I mean? So you get to know everybody. But in a small town, you really have to, because they're all going to be at the same things kind of forever. Okay. I got a little rapid fire for you to help us kind of ease into the interview more. Are you ready? So they're just short answers. Okay. What's the best restaurant in Hayward?
Anglers.
Best place to go fishing?
Can't tell you a fishing spot.
That's the best answer. Best tourist attraction?
I would say Big Muskie is a common tourist destination.
Got to go take a picture with it. It's very Instagram friendly. What's the best place to buy a gift? Because there's like 50 gift shops on the one street.
There are a lot. I would say a lot of people go to the candy stores. Got to go to Tremblay's or Lemery's.
What's the best thing from the candy store?
Pound of fudge.
I was going to say the fudge is definitely my favorite thing there. Where's the best place to go camping?
I would say anywhere on the Chippewa.
There are private campsites, right? But there are like state parks and stuff too that are in the area. Which would be the best one if you had to pick one location somebody could Google and try to go to?
I would say Shady Nook is a good spot.
I've never heard of it, but I'm about to. What's the best winter activity?
Skiing.
Cross-country skiing?
Yeah, I recently got into it. Cross-country skiing.
Oh, okay, cool.
Last year, I mean, we really didn't have much snow to ski on or anything like that, but yeah.
So you're going to do the Berkey in the future?
I do the shorter version, the Cordy, which is like the 29K, but the full Berkey is like 55K. So we'll see. We got to work to that.
Dude, you're young in shape. You got to do it. What's the best up north tradition?
Hunting.
What is the best annual event?
The Berkey.
Yeah, dude. Best thing about living in a small town?
Community.
What's the worst thing about living in a small town?
Community.
Why is Wisconsin better than Minnesota?
Ooh, sports teams.
Oh my God, by a mile. That's the best answer. Hardest subject to teach?
Reading.
What's your favorite subject to teach?
Writing.
Favorite cartoon growing up?
Looney Tunes.
Favorite cartoon, or what's the best cartoon that kids still watch currently?
SpongeBob.
What's your favorite book growing up?
Hatchet.
What's the book recommendation you give all your second graders?
Charlotte's Web.
That's a good one too. Favorite Packers memory?
Them winning the Super Bowl in 2011.
I was going to say it was 2010, but you're right because it was
February.
Yeah, February. Okay. What's your favorite moment from that Super Bowl? Because I know mine.
I would say when Nick Collins got that interception.
Yeah, dude goes to his knees like in the end zone and all the yellow flags for showboating fly down, but they're green and gold. That's like absolute. Yes. That is my favorite one. Okay. So you started making content as the Northern Nerd. How did that kind of evolve? Because it didn't become like a influencer thing where things started going viral and whatever until way later. Was it just a website doing like you said, writings for a real long time, or how did that kind of evolve?
So it started off by, the website, and then I also created a Facebook page. So then I would post like memes for small town life or northern Wisconsin, and then also would post my writings on there. And then around 2020, when the pandemic hit, I was super bored and was like, all right, well, I should start making videos because it was just me in my apartment at the time. So I was like, okay, well, let's start making short form content that people could relate to, whether it was because it was Midwest things or just because it was during the pandemic kind of deal. So that's kind of when my, I guess you would say like content creation kind of took off as far as video form goes.
How come when you got a job teaching that didn't just totally go to the wayside? Teaching is a very much a full-time job. People go, oh, you had summers off, whatever. My mom was an elementary school teacher. It's a lot of work. Mm-hmm. Now you're a new dad, you're married. It's really hard to prioritize something that isn't necessary to your career. And creating content is not necessary to your career.
Right. I would say it's my creative outlet, and I need to feed that beast, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure. Do you think you learned a lot from working with the TV station that translated into making content?
Definitely. It definitely helped with my editing process. So I'm able to do stuff a lot faster than if I was just starting out trying to learn how to do that. So whether that's like saving time, if I put something into like Adobe Premiere Pro and I'm just able to edit real quick, or just transferring photos from my phone or from my camera to my phone. So every bit of time that you have that you can save is time that you can spend with your family and less time you have editing and stuff.
Yeah, dude, tell me about it. I spend so much time editing.
Yeah.
And I have not figured out how to really slim it down yet, because you think you figure out algorithms and then you don't. I'm having my biggest moment on TikTok right now as we speak. The last I checked, it was at 247,000. It's probably at 249 since I checked. But that same video I posted on Instagram and it didn't do anything. Mm-hmm. I posted on YouTube and it didn't do anything. It's just I feel like I have to give the algorithms a whole bunch of chances to pick something for something to go. My idea was I just need to, once I figure this out, I can slim it down and just try to make my 5 best from each episode. And I can't tell which ones are the best, man. I don't even know if the algorithm actually knows which ones are the best.
Right. Yeah. It's really just throwing stuff out there and see what sticks kind of deal. And just remaining true to who you are as a creator and make sure that it's still stuff that you stand behind. So I think that's the biggest thing.
How do you schedule what's your strategy behind the content and scheduling it at this point? Do you try to shoot for something once a week? Do you try to shoot for something every day? Is it 3 videos a month? You know what I mean? Versus however many writings, or is it kind of just as things come to you?
I would say it's more as things come to me. So if there's an idea, I'll make sure that I write it down on a piece of notebook paper or something like that and get to it later. But I try to be consistent as possible. So I'll try to post at least 1 or 2 videos a day as far as my Instagram goes. And then
to your stories or to your feed?
To my feed. So put out 2 reels a day.
Oh, wow. That's a lot.
It is. But I don't know. I'm just able to try to if I can record something long form and then split it up, that way I don't have to sit down and record every night to do that. So right. If I just spend 1, 3-hour session cutting that stuff up, then it makes it easier to post later on in the week if I'm pulling from that same thing.
Yeah.
But then I'll try to do 2 posts on Facebook a day as well. maybe one video and then like just one text or picture post. So
Are they the same content that you're just cross posting, or is it different stuff?
it might be different stuff just depending on what it is. I've found like some certain things will perform better on Instagram rather than Facebook, and then I just won't post those things on Facebook. So if it's like something where on Instagram, where it's just like using a bit of audio that's popular on Instagram, I won't use that on Facebook because I know that I won't be able to find that sound clip again on Facebook.
Yeah.
So I'll just have to come up with something. Like I love sharing my students' quotes of the day.
Sure.
And so that'll really do well on Facebook. So I'll put that both on Instagram and Facebook.
Sure. So why should somebody go follow you? Just because they like Hayward? But I mean, like, what's really the draw? Why has it brought people in?
I think I just try to create a positive environment. I don't try to, I don't know, I don't really like, I want to lift people up when they engage with my content. So it should be something that hopefully makes your day, or is something that makes you laugh, or something that might make you cry, depending on the student story kind of deal.
Sure.
So you feel something for it, but hopefully it fills your bucket for the day.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think Midwest Nice kind of comes through even in content.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I know a lot of content creators, and I feel like a lot of them in bigger cities, there's like prank content, and there is of like all kinds. But I know a lot of Wisconsin influencers, as weird as that is, that's a category.
Right.
Like, there are a lot of them. And kind of all of us are on that train of like, we just want things to be more positive. You know what I mean? Like, the nature of this whole show, I try not to ask things that are like, oh, this is controversial, piss somebody off. Like, this is like, it's overall, I try to have it just be a very uplifting thing. So when did you actually get your job teaching?
So I got it in the 2019. I got it in the fall of 2019. So I was substitute teaching. I graduated from Eau Claire in the winter of 2018, was substitute teaching for that spring. And then I got hired as a second grade teacher in 2019.
No, you got hired as a virtual teacher because everything shut down.
Right. Well,
how long were you actually teaching before it switched to virtual, and how did you do that? Because it's not like you went to college for, like, no one knew what they were doing at that. You didn't know how to be a teacher in the first place at that point, let alone whatever this version of teaching was.
Yeah. So I got like 5 months of a normal school year, and then it switched to that. So yeah, it was crazy. But I think the biggest thing for me was just how like tech savvy I was. And that really helped me be like a good asset to the rest of my teaching team. So I work with, at the time it was 7 other teachers. So then like they would go to me for input on, oh, how do we record this video? So my classroom became like the studio. And so we would record our virtual lessons there. And then from there, we would send those out to the students. So it was kind of one of those things where, I don't know, I was happy to help and be part of the team on that.
Dude, I'm surprised you weren't just like recruited statewide.
Right?
No, for real, man. I mean, like, you can't, teachers don't get, well, I guess that's a whole nother monologue, but teachers really are not paid that much, and they have to go like for a full 4-year degree to be able to do it. They don't teach you anything that isn't like, I guess they teach you irrelevant things, but they don't teach you how to do all these other things as they come up. As things like evolve, it's not like you go back to class and learn how to do this thing. They just assume you have to figure it out. And even with teachers, like, they'll switch and you'll be in 2nd grade, and then all of a sudden you'll be 5th grade the next year. And there's no other additional training. It's just like, well, here's what you have to teach them, kind of just figure it out. So like, having to figure out all of the virtual stuff, thankfully you were a young tech savvy kid. You know what I mean? Because there's a lot of teachers, especially now that they're retiring older and older because they kind of have to. It's hard to learn how to do that when you're 60.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, a lot of them have like the magnifying glass on their phone of like,
oh yeah,
like,
for sure.
Trying to be able to know how to do that must have been difficult. So thankfully they had you, but I bet a lot of other schools struggle with that significantly more if they didn't have somebody like you on their team.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it was just a crazy time, and just everyone was just trying to figure out the best way to reach the students and still educate them through it. And I think we made the most of the situation that we were able to.
How did that change as kids started coming back into school? My kids, it's hard. It's not that long ago, but I feel like it was kind of just, oh, school's back in session, my kids just went back. But I know that wasn't necessarily how it worked for all families. Some people didn't want their kids coming to school for a while, so then teachers were having to like give virtual assignments and do virtual things with some of the kids in the class, but not with other kids in the class. How did that transition go?
Yeah, so how it worked in our district was we had one dedicated teacher that was doing the virtual stuff, and then the
Across
rest of
all
us,
grades?
Just through our second grade.
Oh, okay.
So they would have one teacher, like kindergarten would have a virtual teacher, first grade, second grade.
Do they teach a full class as well, or just virtual?
Just the virtual.
Okay.
So on Fridays, so when we went back to school, I would say it was in the fall of 2020. Yeah, fall of 2020. It was 4-day weeks, and the 5th day they would clean the school, and then we would record all the lessons for the virtual teacher to use. And so that way she would be able to pump those out to the students throughout the week. And then we would have the kids in class, and she would take care of the virtual kids.
Sure. How long did it take before it got to like all kids were in here and we're not doing virtual anymore? Or do you guys still, I feel like there's still virtual options these days, but.
They do that through we have like a charter school. So they do that separately. So now we don't have like one teacher that's dedicated to virtual. Like they would have to go to the charter school to do that. But I think we went back probably fall of 2021. It was back to 5-day school weeks and everything.
So why are there so few male elementary school teachers? You're like very much in the minority.
I'm the only male teacher at our school. So that's 4K through second grade.
Sure.
So it is pretty like, I don't know, it's a good responsibility to have. Like I love to embrace the role, but also at the same time, it can feel kind of isolating and lonely too. Cause you're like, I don't know, there's certain things that, and I make my own dress code basically. I wear khakis and like a button up or things like that. But I'm not sure why more males don't. You see them more in middle school and high school, but then you don't see as many in elementary levels.
Sure.
So I wish we would get more males in the elementary level, just because there's so many students that could benefit from having that male role model in their lives. So.
Do you notice any difference in dynamic between kids with female teachers versus males? Because I feel like especially at the really younger age, like there's so much like subconscious going on with them that they don't know why or how they feel, whatever, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Are they more comfortable with women generally speaking, or do you not really notice a difference at all?
I can't say I've really noticed a difference that much. I do know, like, I don't know, I'll be more of the one to like go play with the kids at recess and stuff like that. And so maybe I'm able to build a connection with a different student from a different class because we played basketball at recess or we played catch or something like that. But I wouldn't necessarily say that I noticed too significant of a difference if a student has a male teacher or a female teacher.
Do you see any of the male students gravitate towards you to help them with other things life-wise or anything like that because there's somebody that they can relate to, similar to like how a son sometimes will go to their father instead of their mother for, you know what I mean, whatever the subject is, you know?
Yeah, I could definitely see that. Like,
do you have that happen with you or not really?
Yeah, I would say over the years, there'd be some students that would, I don't know, be more receptive to myself talking to them about maybe something that's going on at home versus if they're sharing that with a female teacher.
How do you know what boundaries to like keep with that? I mean, for one, boundaries with your own emotions, that's tough, right? Of compartmentalizing, like there's only so much you can do. You know what I mean? That's one of the harder things about teaching. I feel like people don't talk about is you see the problems at home, you see the things they're going through, and you can't overstep. You know, there's like only so much you can do, and you want to do the most that you can, but you got to be able to go home and like leave that from getting into your own family life.
It's hard to separate it sometimes. It really like to not let that stuff keep you up at night. But we also are like mandatory reporters. So if they do tell us something that's like definitely a red flag, we have to get in touch with the right people to make sure that that student is safe and everything like that. So if they're just having like maybe a hard time with the sibling, being a listening ear for that. But if there's other stuff like I don't know, more severe things going on, then we definitely would seek the right people for that.
Yeah, but I mean, even so, there's a huge spectrum between like abuse, you know, versus like a kid just not getting what they need emotionally, support-wise or anything like that too. And you can't, I feel like you're in a position where you're in that position because you want to help kids and because you care about kids. But I feel like it would be really difficult when you see a kid that you know would benefit from you giving them more time and attention, but you can't because you can't do that for everybody. For me, it would be really hard to compartmentalize that.
It is. Yeah.
But you're slowly getting better.
Yeah, it's something, I don't know, first, I'm in my 6th year of teaching now, and it's still something like that you have to wrestle with, like, how much time can I give this?
Sure.
But just being there and being a listening ear is, I think, the most the best thing that you can do for that student.
How do you switch your mind off from it? Like if you are, say you're driving home and you know it was a tough day with this kid, like, and we're talking about compartmentalizing, what do you do? Do you like listen to music? Do you try to like do a breathing exercise or something? Like what have you found works for you to kind of separate it? Because I think that would apply honestly for a lot of other people's careers too. You know what I mean? Like I had a meeting earlier today with one of my bigger sponsors that about like re-signing for a year-long contract, like is would be important to me and it's stressful, you know? And then I went, I had to go run some errands with my girlfriend and I was just like regurgitating all of my thoughts about it. And I'm like, she doesn't need to hear all of this stuff. You know, like I need to figure out how to shut these things off. Totally different thing to shut off, but what works for you to do that?
I would say sometimes it's a silent drive home, like not having the radio on at all, just because there's so many questions and things that teachers are asked throughout the day. So sometimes it's just nice to like just hear no noise and just maybe roll the window down a little bit and just remind yourself of like where you're at. And so that might just be like, all right, I'm here, I'm present, doing some breathing as you're driving home and thinking about ways, maybe what you're going to cook for dinner that night. Make it like goals that you can reach right away instead of like these big things that you're trying to accomplish with that student, but you just got to take it day by day and thinking about, all right, what's the best thing I can do right now to make sure that I'm ready to go the next day for that student. Because I think the biggest thing that teachers, if they're there every single day for that student, and they may not have that at home. And so if they can see like, all right, when they walk in the door, they're ready to go for me and I can be 100% with this teacher.
What happens when you feel like you've failed them?
Man, that weighs on you for sure.
Yeah.
You think of like, oh, I made a mistake in maybe how I handled this situation. And then you try again the next day. And if you made a mistake, I would say like I own up to it sometimes. Like it's not always the easiest thing to do, but it's best to say like, hey, I didn't handle this situation the best yesterday. Like if a student is really testing your patience sometimes, and it's just best to repair that relationship and then try to continue to build that going forward.
Yeah. I mean, it's a hard thing. Like I feel like a lot of adults don't give kids enough credit. They're not on the equal level of intelligence at this point in time yet. They haven't matured to that. So I feel like sometimes adults get frustrated and because they're like, why are you acting like this? It's like, because they're not an adult. They don't process things the same way. You got to remember that they're not at that space yet. Like you weren't like that either. And like trying to be the adult in every situation is a challenge sometimes. Are you a coffee drinker?
Definitely.
Okay. Do you like decaf or are you normal and you like regular coffee?
I like regular coffee.
Okay, cool.
I need it as a teacher, man. I need it.
Dude, honestly, like I would drink decaf too, but I have 2 different bags of coffee. So you could have the decaf if you wanted from Big Bad Decaf, 3 Bears. It's very good. Tastes wonderful, but it doesn't have caffeine. I want caffeine, so I have a bag of minimum wage Tim's coffee for you.
Oh, thank you. Awesome.
Whole bean.
Yes.
Which is the freshest. That's what you need. And I'm actually, that was brewed sourced from Honduras. Minimum Wage Tim's is actually just my buddy Tim from Minneapolis.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he plays music. He's just like dope dude.
Yeah.
But I'm going to Honduras in 2 months. So
that's awesome, man.
I'm super excited about it. All right, let's talk about your book.
Yeah.
I can't believe that you wrote a book, man.
Thanks.
Like it's so hard to find time to do anything again that isn't necessary for your career. I know it's a creative outlet, but I feel like putting out a book has got to be like a lot of work.
Yeah, it's a lot I would always keep notebooks and things like that and just write. I would write I came out with this back in 2020 actually. So I would sit and write at a coffee shop all the time, Backroads Coffee in Hayward, and would just kind of post up in the corner and write poems every day. I would spend $1.25 on a refill of coffee and just sit there and write poetry all day.
So it's all poems.
Yeah, it's all like free verse.
Oh, okay, cool.
I'd say that's my writing style is free verse poetry.
How long did it take you to write this?
I'd say 2 years.
How come on the back it has not the Northern Nerd?
Well, that's a funny story. So I didn't have an Instagram until like 2020.
Oh, okay.
I didn't have an Instagram for the Northern Nerd till then.
When did this book come out?
Early 2020, I think.
Oh, okay. Did you go through a publisher or did you just kind of do this by yourself?
Self-published it.
Can you read a passage of this for me?
Sure.
So the ramblings of a 20-something, which you can only get while he's still in his 20-somethings.
Yes.
Then it's discontinued.
I got one more year. Well, I'm 29 right now, so I'll be 30 next August.
So get it while you can. Where can you buy it? Like Amazon or what?
Yeah. You can get it on Amazon. Yeah,
local bookstores in Hayward.
Yes. All right, this is one that I wrote about homecoming, because homecoming is kind of a big deal in small towns. A chill fills the air that brings back a familiar feeling. I welcome it back like an old friend with open arms. I would offer to buy it a beer if I could. The leaves scatter the ground. The raking of them will soon be added to my weekend chore list. Logs burn bright under a moonlit, starry night sky. Boots find rocks to rest on around the fire pit. I picture myself, back in my helmet playing under those lights. We all do. I look around me in the stands in between bites of popcorn. The old man that owns the hardware stores remembering that night he scored the game-winning touchdown against a crosstown rival. The man with his young son sitting next to him admiring them, wondering if one of them will wear his number someday. The grandma watching her grandson play is thinking back to those nights on the sidelines cheering her team on to victory, her pom-poms now in a box in the attic. Jerseys change and get updated throughout the years. Slow songs danced to at a homecoming dance to find nights to remember in the future. Cars get packed up and people move away. Different political and religious views are a means of dividing us, but one thing always brings us back together: those Friday night lights. Whether you played in the band or were the star quarterback, you were together on nights like this, and you always will be.
Dude, that's awesome.
Thanks.
I like that. And I mean, really, though, that's like the cool thing about small towns is, again, you're forced to be around each other. So people find what the common ground is. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And they're able to let all the other things go. You see people that would otherwise not hang out. You know what I mean? Like if you were in a bigger city, you'd be like, you would not, unless they're related, they're not hanging out. Versus in small towns, just like everyone does. Mm-hmm. You know, and I think that's really rad. So
thank you.
All right. So currently, what are all the things you do? You're a father. You still write, like, because you're working on the 30-something.
Right.
I would hope. You're doing a podcast. You're doing all the content across all the socials. Is that all of it?
And then, doing sports videography, photography.
That's right.
Yeah, I would say that's all I'm doing. I just retired from DJing too. So,
what was your DJ name?
DJ Dalton. It was so creative.
Dude, come on. You got to come up with a better one.
That's what my teammates called me in college. I played on the club baseball team, and I would DJ some of the basement parties, and they'd be like, DJ Dalton, play this song.
Sure.
So,
what's up with the hat? Is that your brand?
Yeah. Yep, okay, this is my Northern Nerd logo.
When did you start like making merchandise and all of that? When social media started to go?
I would say, yeah. Yep, I would say right around like 2020. It was when I just had like a lot of time and I was like, all right, well, let's put out a book. Let's put together some merch and things like that and be ready to go.
Cool. So 2020 is when social media started to take off. Did it take off on Instagram first? Did it take off on Facebook? And then you started the other ones? Were you TikTok famous? I mean, you're kind of like on a bunch of things, but like how did it progress? Right now, for me, Instagram is where I put all my time and energy forever, you know, and it was Apple Podcasts along with it. That's where I worked. Then I kind of started pushing Spotify a little bit. Then I started making a lot more like video content. So now YouTube was a big thing. And most recently, TikTok I've been working on. But like, what was yours?
I would say the first thing that kind of blew up for me was TikTok. Like I would share a lot of different teacher stories, but then also like it was fall of 2021 where I had 8 boys in my class and 3 girls. And then out of that came the second grade frat and second grade for sorority. So like one day all 3 of my girls were gone and it was just me and the boys walking down the hallway, and another teacher made a comment like, oh, it looks like you guys are a fraternity. And so I was like, all right, we got to come up with a frat name. And so I sat down with my boys and I was like, all right, what are some things you guys like? They're like, well, pizza and monster trucks. And so out of that came Delta Pizza Monster Trucks. And then the girls was Kappa Rainbow Unicorn. And so like I would come up with like, oh, it's rush week at Delta Pizza Monster Truck. Like we're hitting the root beer hard or something like that. And people just loved it and it kind of took off. So that was where my TikTok first took off at. And then just growth over the years through Facebook and then Instagram as well. So I'd say I don't put as, now that the second grade frats shut down, it was my own choosing to shut it down. It wasn't like administration like saying like, you can't do that. But I would say I post more on Instagram now than any other platform.
Sure. Is there a reason for that?
I think just I'm able to find more community in Instagram. Like I'm able to I don't know if there's other people, well, like you, how I got in contact with you is like through Instagram. So
Yeah.
I feel like there's more connectivity that I've found through that.
Yeah, well, I think it's like the platform people take the most seriously, if that makes sense. I don't know if it's really serious, but
Right.
people take it more seriously. And I think like even just like TikTok. So like I mentioned you earlier, I have one that's kind of going viral like currently. I don't know. I got so many followers on TikTok from it, like over 1,000 in the last 2 days.
That's big. Yeah.
Yeah, it was dope. So I have no idea who followed me. Because like I'm not gonna go look through all 1,000. Like last I checked, it was like 1,300 people or something that have followed me over the last 2 days. I have no idea who any of those people are. That's not how it ever happens for me on Instagram. I always like kind of see who follows me. So that's when all of a sudden connections happen. Like I don't know if I followed you first or which way it worked, but I'll see somebody like you and go, oh, mental note, I need to contact this guy at some point because what he's doing is cool. It's like in a space that makes sense for me. And honestly, dude, I was so excited to finally talk to a teacher. Like I've trying to figure out who I'm going to interview. There's like has to be some strategy to it.
Right.
It's like not exclusively like I've heard people say like, oh, you chase numbers. Everyone chases numbers. Like, let's just be real here, right? You're working with a brand. They get more of a benefit if somebody with a larger following shares something. It's just part of it, right? So I have to like consider that when I do stuff. That's not the only decision. Kevin Bolger doesn't have a huge following, but he's an Olympian. Like, I'm trying to interview him. You know what I mean?
He's got a story to share.
That's what I'm saying. So, but there still has to like be something that makes sense. And so teachers was like one thing, especially because my mom was one, where I'm like, I got to interview one at some point. I just got to figure out where it would make sense. And then you come along. And I was like, wow, dude, a like up north Wisconsin content creator, but I can talk to him about teaching. Sick. So it really worked out. I was pretty stoked that we were able to make this happen.
Yeah. And happy you reached out and I'm able to sit down and talk with you.
Yeah, drive all the way here. So the merchandise, when did you decide that you wanted to make merch and why?
I think a big part of it for me was just wanting to, I don't know, see my friends wearing my gear was the cool thing. Like, or like I'd spot like a hat in town and be like, oh yeah, that's my stuff. I would say like it hasn't been as like, I don't really have like too big of like a online shop. I do mostly like sales at events that I put on. So if I'm putting on like, recently I've done movies at our old theater in town. And so they play live music there often, but I wanted to bring back like old school movies like The Sandlot or Young Frankenstein. We showed Elf there around Christmas. We had 10 Things I Hate About You in February. So trying to bring some of those movies back where people can enjoy them on the big screen. And so I would have like a merch table set up there. Or if doing something that for like, we did a town skating party at our local tot lot where it's like a flooded rink. And then I had one of our local coffee shops, like she's a mobile coffee shop, Salem Mobile Coffee Shop that was there. And she had twinkle lights and everything. It just was like the small town Christmas aesthetic that you go for or you see in a movie. So trying to just set up at different events that I'm at.
Yeah. So what made you want to, well, for one, if people know you are the one who put in the time to organize the event, a lot of times people will be like, hey, can I donate? Having merch, like they just want to buy something because they want to support you in some way as like a thank you. You know what I mean? So you almost get forced into like, well, I have to. Like people want this. What was the first event that you organized and why do you choose to put time into that as well? Because again, like you only, there is a pie. There's like only so much of the pie and you're trying to like split it up into a lot of things. That's a whole nother thing. Event organizing is a ton of work.
Yeah. I would say one of the first events that I put on was we did like a pizza party for like a back to school. So one of my friends has like a wood fire pizza maker at his house and he lives right in town. And so we were like, all right, well, how do we do how about we do a back to school bash kind of deal? And so people could come have free wood fire pizza and just be able to come together and hang out as we get excited for a new school year. And then after that was successful, then we also did like an end of the school year party where we had like a dunk tank and everything like that. And kids and families could just come over and have fun and eat some pizza.
Do you try to like be strategic with them and make them fundraisers or anything? Or what are the goals with them? Is it just to get people together?
I think, well, if I was smart, it would probably be to pick a fundraiser. But right now it's just been to get people together. Because I think that's the easiest thing is to like isolate yourself in a small town where it's like, I'm just going to be, I'll go to my job and then I'll just come home. But then also at the same time, it's hard to build community when you're just doing that. So I wanted to give people like myself opportunities to come together and build that community.
Not that many people take that initiative to do that. Like, I feel like our age group is less apt to do it than people in the past have, especially because of like just so many all of their interactions are virtual these days. I feel like people are more hobbits than they used to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I really value that person-to-person connection. And you never know, like, I don't know, maybe you become friends with somebody that you meet at a social event that I'm throwing. And so I want people to feel connected through that. And, you know, you have a better community when there's people that feel like they belong. And so that's why I kind of put together the events. Yeah.
I mean, I think it is extremely valuable. And I know you don't do anything for the money really, but I think there is a lot of potential there. Not just to like make money for yourself, but I mean fundraisers or anything, like partnering with organizations, because you're doing all the legwork. You know what I mean? Like a lot of these brands, and I'll just like, you know, Nicolay or Quick Trip or what, like a lot of these brands would love to do an event and have their name on it. They just don't have the soldiers to do it. You know what I mean? But they would donate, and they would love to have their names donating on something. And they don't have the employees to go do the thing. But if you wanted to do a cookout, and I'm just throwing Quick Trip out of the wind, but like if you were to like hit up Quick Trip and say, hey, we want to raise money for the school, that's why we're doing this thing, a lot of these brands would be like, yup, here's a banner and $1,000. You know what I mean? Like, I think if you, I guess, especially when you're not making money, that's adding another layer of things to do. But I think there's a lot of potential for something like that, especially in being such a tourist town.
Yeah.
How is Hayward different during the winter versus the summer?
I would say that the pace is a little bit slower. There's definitely like the influx of people in the summertime is just crazy. Like you try to go anywhere for dinner on a weeknight and good luck. Or not even, well, on a weeknight and the weekend. Like you really got to be strategic about how you go about doing that. So I would say traffic slows down a little bit, but then it ramps up again once we start to get snow on the ground. So right now is probably like our biggest lull, just because there's not as much going on. Like the snowmobiles aren't out yet, people aren't skiing yet, but it is cooler and people are back to school. But as the snow starts to fall and people get their sleds out and things like that, then you'll see that go up. So last year was a little bit different because we didn't have the snow, so there wasn't as much traffic. So locals really had to rally together to support those small businesses to keep them going, which they did a great job of doing. But I would say, the biggest thing that I noticed is like being able, if I can go into either Walmart or Marketplace and go like quickly in and out, then I'm like, okay, we've reached the point where I can breathe a little bit. Or you start seeing locals again. You're like, oh, I haven't seen you in forever. Like, finally time to come out of the woodwork and be amongst people again. Yeah, I mean, it's funny, right? Because it depends on where your income comes from. But some people hate tourism and other people love it. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like when we make decisions for like the city of Eau Claire as an example, we just put in like a $1.2 million boardwalk that kind of goes through the wetlands. And it's like so beautiful, right? There were a lot of people, I shouldn't say a lot, there were some people that didn't want it. And they're like, oh, this costs money and this is whatever. It's like, yes, but these are the things that attract people to come to town, you know? And really, like, I guess I look at it as like every city is a bubble financially, you know what I mean? Like one person gets paid and usually they'll spend that money within that bubble again, and the money kind of stays until you order off Amazon, and then it siphons away. Right. You know what I mean? But it kind of stays in that way. The only way to bring more is bringing outside money, getting somebody who's from Minnesota to spend their money in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. That like helps so much everything. And towns like Hayward, I don't know what they would do if tourism disappeared. And obviously like winters, they're just kind of disappearing. You know what I mean? And I feel like they have to try to make up for it with longer summers, maybe putting more events later in the summer or, you know, early fall than they used to. Cause like for the longest time, pretty much all major events were in the summer, right? Applefest and whatever. Or Applefest, is that fall? I would say that's more fall. That's up in Bayfield. Oh, okay. What are the biggest events for Hayward? I would say, so you start off the year in February with the Berkey, and then after that you have, I would say Muskie Fest is more of like a local event, but then you have Lumberjack World Championships that take place, and then you also have the Chequamegon Mountain Bike Festival that's kind of in the fall, and then those are, I would say, are the three main ones that happen in Hayward. Sure. But then you have fishing that takes place all summer, and things like that. So would say those would be the main players.
Yeah, all the hidden spots.
Yeah.
So I feel like people go to Hayward for, like, everyone goes up to there for kind of the same reasons. What are the biggest reasons people should visit Hayward that they don't already know about?
I would say biggest reason to come, man, just finding that rest and relaxation. I know that a lot of people already come for that, but to truly like embrace the peace that you find amongst nature wherever you're able to do that. So like, yes, go downtown, support the small businesses and things like that, but also like really enjoy and unplug, like grab a book and just read one morning with a cup of coffee, and just the I'd say the peace that it brings you that's why I live there.
Yeah. I interviewed this dude, Daniel Donato. He's a guitar player that's pretty big. He's like still young. Like, I think he might be younger than you.
Okay.
But he's like and he's been big since he was like pretty young. He's crazy. He's incredible. And in that genre, he'll be famous forever. He owns a place in Nashville. That's where he lives. But he purposely bought a place outside of town. And he told me that when he turns his lights off, there's no unnatural light to infect anything. It's just quiet. And he made a really good point to me. And he said, like, and this dude's just a genius. Like, if you want to listen to an episode, it's not even about me talking at all. Just this dude, he's so interesting to listen to, even though he's young. Dude's a genius and looks at the world different. But he was just explaining how, like, on our phones, we get this like unnatural endorphins. You know what I mean? That come through. And so we're like trying to chase those things. And he said, but if you think about like 500 years ago, what things would have made you happy, those things still make you happy. We just like don't experience them. Like most people don't ever go outside and do that. Most people don't just go lay outside and look at the stars like in Hayward or outside of Hayward, that you can actually see the Milky Way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, these things are incredible and people just don't, I don't know. They just like don't think to do them, I guess.
I think, the biggest thing I enjoy right now this time of year is like going out, having a little campfire and just laying up and looking at the stars. Like, that's so therapeutic to me.
Yeah, dude. I mean, even in Eau Claire, just having campfires in the backyard is dope. Like, that's one thing that I think a lot of people in big cities, I can't understand. And I feel like some of them just grow up there, so they don't,
they don't know anything else.
Yeah, exactly. But just how much like having nature affects everything in a positive way. How is teaching second grade, like for a second grader now, how is second grade different than it was when you were growing up and in second grade?
I would say the technology aspect of it for sure.
Yeah.
Like, we have smart boards in our rooms where we're able to pull up videos, write on like a whiteboard, take a screenshot of it, save it for the next day. And I remember when I was in second grade, my teacher, who actually I work with now, so the teacher that taught me in second grade is still teaching there.
Oh God.
So that took a little getting used to.
Yeah.
But I remember going up and like writing on a slide projector and everything like that. So I think the technology is probably the biggest thing.
Yeah. Do you notice that kids are way better at technology than you feel like they should be? Like, I feel like kids know how to navigate tablets and stuff way better than they should at age 7.
Yeah. I think it's definitely changed how you teach, and you can use it for good for sure. Like, we, all the different programs that we use for, as far as our math or reading programs, is just going to elevate what they're able to learn if they're interacting with it in the correct way.
So are you teaching math totally different?
I would say I've taught it, I don't know, kind of the way I was taught it, but then there's things that you change. So a lot of people will bring up like Common Core and things like that, but it's the different strategies you're exposing to the students. So one student might learn better if you show it this way, but then you expose them to a different strategy and they can use whatever ones they want to use.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of gets like I don't know, teaching nowadays as far as math goes might get a bad rap, but it's actually, you're just exposing the students to different strategies and they can use the one that best works for them.
Okay.
Is the way I go about it.
Yeah, that makes way more sense. Do you find that summertime you have way more time for content and you just like stock up a whole bunch?
I would say like I try to do, well, now that having like a 1-year-old, that's definitely changed like what I'm able to do in the summertime. Yeah. But the days that she's at daycare, I'll dedicate to just cranking out as much stuff as I can and kind of having like a library full of it. So that way I can just slowly put it out throughout the week. But that way I'm the most present with my daughter as much as I can be when I'm like, when I have time with her.
It would be hard to choose to put your kid in daycare if you have an option not to, though. Right? How do you choose to drop your kid off at daycare to like work on content stuff? Doesn't that like kill you a little inside doing it every time?
A little bit. Yeah, for sure. Like, so in the summertime, she'll go to daycare like 2 days a week, and then I'll watch her the other 3 days. So
yeah, sure. Okay. All right. So let's talk about your wife, because your wife sounds like the best person ever.
she's pretty awesome.
Dude, but for real though, like your people's partners, what they have to put up with, you know what I mean? Especially when you're doing content stuff, they put up with a lot without getting any benefit from it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we get the benefit from it when we see our numbers grow or whatever. It's really cool. But it's our partners that have to deal with us like sitting there on our phones all the time, or like, oh, I got to go do this thing. I know we're out doing this, but we got to put a pause because I got to work on this thing. I got to go to respond to whatever. You know what I mean? How'd you meet your wife?
Yeah, so she's been super supportive. I met her back in 2020. So it was, I want to say June 6th. Yeah, June 6th. I was sitting at a coffee shop, the same one that I wrote the book at. And I was just finishing up with my, like I do morning devotionals. And so I was finishing up with that. And then in walks this girl with like a taller friend. And for whatever reason, I look up and I say hi, and she says hi back. And I never met her before, but she goes and sits at the back of the coffee shop with her friend. And I was just about ready to go, but something was telling me like, all right, I got to stay and I got to talk to this girl. And so I'd been by myself for a long time, like at my apartment. So I was like, all right, Dalton's back out in the wild. Like, keep it cool. And so I sat there and like, quote unquote, read my book for about 10 more minutes. And then I got the courage to go over and talk to them. And luckily, her friend was wearing a shirt. It was a Bethel sweatshirt where my sister went to college. So I was like, okay, this is how I can start the conversation. And so I go over there and I say, oh, did you guys both go to Bethel? And they said, yeah, we're visiting from the Twin Cities. And I said, okay. And I got to talk with them a little bit, told them I was a second grade teacher. But then I left without like giving her my name at all, and just could not close. And so I left and I was in line at the bank.
Could not close.
I couldn't. Yeah. And I was in line at the bank and I was like, I'm really going to regret it if I don't go back there and like give her my name and number. And so I raced back there, and thankfully they were still there. And I couldn't just like rush up to them after I just left like 10 minutes ago. And so I went to the front counter, got like 2 gift cards to the coffee shop, and was like, hey, welcome to the area. Thanks for visiting, kind of deal. And then
you bought her affection.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yep. With a $5 gift card. And then she said, well, what are your plans for the rest of the day? I said, I really have nothing going on. Like our school year just wrapped up. And she said she invited me to go floating down the river that day with them. So we went floating down the Namakagon River the first day I met her, and been together ever since.
Wow, dude. Yeah, she's a saint that she puts up with you.
Yeah.
I mean, you do a lot of cool stuff, but again, like there is a pie, and a lot of that pie is being given to other things. So the fact that she sticks with you is pretty rad. And the fact that you guys met IRL.
Yeah.
Like nobody meets in real life anymore. You know what I mean? It's really hard to meet people in real life at this point. And I feel like I think there's a lot of reasons for it. And I feel like it probably depends on where you live as well. But I think a lot of people, even when they're single, aren't looking for like other people in the real world. They're all just like tunnel vision. You know what I mean? Because they're on Tinder and all whatever dating apps and talking to 3 other people. And so like those are the only people that are even on their radar. Nobody in the real world is on their radar. So props on you to doing that. And props on you for turning around and driving back and coming up with a plan and a strategy for how to rope her in. That's incredible.
Thanks. Yeah, it was one of those things like We Bought a Zoo. Have you ever seen that movie with Matt Damon?
No.
Well, anyways, in the movie, he's actually talking to his kids about how he met his wife. And he said he walked past her at a diner. And he said to himself, like, just give yourself, I think it's 15 seconds of insane courage and go and say hi to her. Like, what's the worst thing that can happen? She can say no. Yeah. And that's it. And so I watched that movie, like, I would have to say maybe a month or 2 before I met my wife, and just kind of use that as like, go for it.
Dude, did you send Matt Damon like a thank you?
I need to.
You should, man.
I need to get on that. Yeah.
You would be surprised by how many celebrities would see things. Like if you actually sent a little handwritten card and told that story and sent it to his assistant or whatever, that would probably actually reach his hands. You should do that, man.
I'm gonna go for that. Yeah.
Dude, Matt Damon changed your life. That's incredible. So you were telling me before that you do some sports videography, some photography. Is that just to supplement income during the summer, or are you trying to do that year round? Why do you want to do that as well? Again, it's just like a whole nother thing that takes time. Why do you want to do that?
I think for me, photography and videography has always kind of been a passion of mine as well. I have a lot of passions, but starting in like sixth grade, I would always walk around with a camera and just like document different, whether I was like, we were hanging out at a friend's house or on a school field trip or at a sporting event, I would always be taking pictures or videos. And I remember putting like DVDs together and handing them to my friends like, hey, here's the recap from the weekend kind of deal before like putting stuff on YouTube. But for me, it's always been, I don't know, just wanting to capture, like, I love candid moments. I love capturing candid moments. And so trying to capture that through sports, but also through just interactions that people have. And so that's always kind of been like the story that I want to tell through the camera lens.
Sure.
And so I think capturing, like most recently, high school football games has been a lot of fun to try to, I get to run the sideline and everything like that and try to capture the touchdowns or the big plays of the student section. And that's been a lot of fun to like, I don't know, get back to my house and I don't sleep until I like finish editing it. And then just the rush of the, I don't know, for me, I love the grind of that. Whether it's capturing high school football or capturing the Berkey or Lumberjack World Championships, it's always been just the fun part of like meeting the athletes, meeting the people, hearing their story, but then also telling that story through my camera.
Dude, I'm sure a lot of them are very grateful to have those things. Because you think about, especially as you get older, your like window of time that you can do something like football is like such a short time frame. And that's like, those are memories that people carry that they think really fondly of. But a lot of people don't have anything documented from that. You know what I mean? They just have to try to remember. Like those photos are really valuable. How do you get hired by like a team? Do you negotiate with them to be like, hey, this is how much and I'll come out and shoot a thing? Do you just do it purely on your own time and then you walk up to them and say, hey, do you want your photo? Like how does it kind of work?
Yeah, so I'd say for like the bigger events like the Berkey or the Lumberjack World Championships, that's something like I contract out with them.
Yeah.
But as far as like the high school football games, that's just me kind of like just giving back to the community. So I'll send the athletes, a lot of them I've coached already in baseball. So I'll just send them the videos or pictures and then they can use them on their Instagram if they tag me kind of deal. So it's kind of like one of those things where it's like, I don't know, it's cool capturing. And it's also building like my portfolio. I think one of my goals, bucket list goals would be like to do video for the Packers or take pictures for the Packers. Not like a full-time job, but like for a game, I want to know what that feels like.
Sure. Dude, I bet it's more like within the realm of possibility than you think. You know what I mean? Especially if you're not like trying to get contracted for a whole bunch of money. If you just like get in contact with them, give the portfolio and say, hey, I will do it for free and I'll be the second. Like, dude, if somebody backs out and you just need a second camera angle, like I want to be on the short list. The thing with all of that stuff is just being top of mind and readily available. When somebody has a problem, a lot of times it's whatever the fastest solution is the one they go with. You know, whatever's the quickest one that comes to mind. You know, regardless of like if you have, even if it's not the best like solution to a problem, it's the one they could think of right then. You know what I mean? So you just got to position yourself in that kind of way. Like Zane Stotts, who I interviewed recently, he's like an artist that does stuff with a bunch of Packers. He paints cleats for a bunch of the Packer players. Okay. Like personalized ones, right? Well, he did a painting for Kenny Clark, and Kenny just asked him like, oh, do you paint cleats? And he was like, well, I could. Like I haven't, but I could. Dude, Kenny Clark has enough money. You could pay anybody to do whatever he wants with his shoes. You know what I mean? Like that dude, I don't know what his last contract was, but he's making $20 million a year or whatever. He can afford to hire any artist anywhere in the world to paint his cleats. But Zane was right there. So I was like, oh, you could maybe do this, right? Zane was not the appropriate person to hire for that because he didn't know how to paint cleats. He had never done that before. He learned, and now he's done it for a bunch of players, but it was just like putting himself in the position where he was the one to ask. You know what I mean? So I feel like that's all it really takes. I want to get a couple more stories out of you. I think what you do is underappreciated and extremely difficult, like I was kind of talking about emotionally, of like being able to compartmentalize. What has been the most difficult experience that you've had to go through so far that you're proud of yourself for getting through?
Just anything in life or just teaching?
I guess anything in life.
Gosh, I would probably say losing my grandpa early, like unexpectedly while I was in college was really tough. That was something like very unexpected. Like yes, he was a smoker for the most of his adult life, but then like heart attack and he was gone kind of deal. And I always had a good connection with my grandpa that way. And so losing him was like one of the toughest things, but like the thing that he instilled in me was like an honest day's work. And so like even after, like the day after he passed, I was still went to class the next day, and people were like, why are you here? And I was like, well, it's kind of what my grandpa would have wanted, kind of deal.
Sure.
So I'd say that, and most recently my mother-in-law had a stroke back in March, and so she's been living with us since May. And so just like juggling that while also having like a 1-year-old has been tough. But like then I've also seen like the goodness of so many people in my community that have been like, hey, I'll bring you over a meal. Like, you don't have to cook tonight. Don't worry about it. And so I think that's where the value of small town life has really played an important role in my life. Just seeing people coming out for me and showing that support.
How has that changed the direction you want to take your life? For me, my parents, in a brief, like short time frame of my life, my parents split up. My dad had a really bad heart attack, didn't think he was going to live, eventually did, but then he ended up having a heart transplant. And I had my first child and I got married. There was just like a lot of things that happened in kind of a short time frame. And that was what triggered me to realize that like money didn't really matter to me at all. You know what I mean? Because I saw my parents, they were gonna retire. Like they were like so close to retiring with enough money to like kind of do whatever they wanted, you know, within reason. Like they're teachers, they didn't make a lot of money, but they were set where like, okay, cool. We have a cabin on a lake. We have a house that's paid off. Like we could travel and kind of do whatever. And then it was all gone. You know what I mean? And my parents always kind of talked to me about like, oh, the next stage, like it's going to be once you guys are out of sports, we're going to be able to do all these things. Once you guys are out of high school, we're going to be able to do. So it's like they were always talking about the next stage when they would finally be able to do these things. And so they needed that financial stability, and then it was gone. And for me, then it was like, maybe to a fault, I don't care about money. Like it's financially stable doesn't matter that much to me, you know? And thankfully, like I just don't spend a lot, so I'm fine. But like, it changed how I approached everything. I was working for Verizon, like trying to make as much money as possible. And that was like the trajectory I was on until that stuff happened. And then it was like, I don't care about that at all. And then I opened up a skateboard shop to make like no money. You know what I mean? I didn't have a car for like 2 years. And I just like rode a little cruiser board. It was middle of winter. I would ride a mountain bike 2 miles to my store, like through the snow, because money didn't matter. You know what I mean? It just changed everything. How did things change for you?
I would say it's just, like what you said, not waiting for like that next thing, like, oh, well, eventually we'll be able to do this, or like after this thing finish up, then we'll be able to do this. Like for us, it's always been like, let's just go for it. Like, let's do the experiences. So a lot of people are like, oh, well, don't bring a baby on a plane. Like it'll ruin the trip kind of deal. It's like, well, our daughter was 2 months old and we took a trip to Denver with her and went to a hockey game. It was like, all right, well, we're not going to put our life on pause just because we have a kid. Like, let's incorporate her into every aspect of our lives kind of deal. So I think the biggest thing for me, just learning like each moment that we have is so precious that it would be foolish not to make the most of it. So might as well like be kind, live the life that you want to, and good things are going to come from that.
Dude, absolutely. And I feel like I really do think good things just happen to good people. Like karma exists. And I think it's partially just like statistically speaking, you know what I mean? Like you run into the same people. So if you're nice to people, chances are you're going to run into somebody you were nice to, and you're going to have a problem that they happen to be there and can help, and they will because you were nice to, like I think it's not just like this like spiritual thing. I think statistically speaking, karma like does actually work. I want one more story. So you do something that you're really passionate about for a living, which is teaching. Obviously you do a lot of other things. I think there are so many rewards to teaching. I know like you haven't been teaching long enough to see kids that you taught graduate from high school and go off to college and like become an NFL player and go, this all happened because of my teacher, Dalton. He believed in me. Like that didn't happen yet. But share one story of something you're really grateful for that only happened because you chose to become a teacher.
I think receiving like notes at the end of the year has been the biggest thing. Like, oh, like you made such a difference in, like a parent note or even a note from a kid saying like, hey, you made such a difference in my school year, and how they were excited to go to school and not like trying to lay under the covers and say like, oh, I'm sick, I'm not going to come. Like getting my son or my daughter to school each and every day because they look forward to what was going to happen in your classroom has been the biggest thing for me, and the biggest motivator, and the biggest like why I do what I do. And yes, some days are tough, and some days are you're just beating your head against the wall, like that they're not learning this concept that I'm trying to teach, or maybe their behavior is poor. But like if you look at the end result, Like your goal is to like make the children like functioning adults, but also show that you care so much about them and make your classroom a safe space. And so if a student can, like maybe they had a bad year previously, but then they can look forward to coming to your class each and every day. Like that's the biggest thing for me, is making sure I have positive connections with the student and knowing like I made a difference in their lives while they're in my classroom.
Yeah, dude. I mean, again, I don't think people give teachers enough credit, but like you're the third parent, or maybe the second parent, or whatever the situation is, but like you spend more time with those kids that during that school year than they do with their parents. Like realistically speaking, you know, I hang out with my kids as much as I can, you know, like obviously they live with me every other week and we do stuff together, and weekends try to prioritize them. But like they spend more time with whatever their like main teacher is, especially elementary school when they're not bopping between classes. Like they spend more time with that person. That's the adult like role model for them more than anybody else in their lives. And so the fact that you actually take that like intentionally and know that and try to purposely have a positive impact and realize how big of an impact that you have, whether it's going to be positive or negative, it's a huge responsibility to like take upon yourself. But I guess like there's no reward if you don't put in any work either, right? So.
Right, exactly. You can't expect great results if there's no effort that's put in, or minimal effort that's put in.
Yeah, dude, which is why you had to put the maximum effort to drive all the way here for this interview.
Exactly.
Perfect segue. Yes. Well, dude, thank you so much for driving all the way here. This was awesome. Give a shout out to all the places that people can find you, and then the best ways they can support you, whether it's buying the book on Amazon, going to your website, buying a hat, donating to the school that you work at. Like, shout out all those things.
Yeah. So if you want to find me on socials, it's at the Northern Nerd. So that's on Facebook, that's on Instagram, that's on TikTok, also on YouTube. Haven't posted that much on YouTube yet, but it's starting out. Also, my website is thenorthernnerd.com. So you can check out my books on Amazon. Just search Dalton Hessel and my books will pop up on there.
Hessel is Hessel?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And then, if you want to, I don't know, if you want to hire me to do videography or photography for your cabin or your Airbnb, VRBO, that'd be great. Or if you're the Packers and want me to shoot a football game, I'm always here for that. Or anything really. I'm always down to get different experiences with a camera. So those are the ways you can find me.
Dude, I feel like you need to partner with your tourism department. Like, I don't know why they haven't hired you yet to do a whole bunch of stuff. Like, you would be the perfect tour guide.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like, show you around Hayward.
Life. That's what I'm saying, though. Yeah. Like, people would eat it up. That would be cool, and I'm sure you'd have fun with it. Like, if you did, they have tour guides in every city. I bet during, like, the main times of, because we even have stuff like that in Eau Claire, kind of. Like, we have these, like, trolley tours. I bet during, like, the big festivals that you have there, you could talk to your tourism department, and then you could do walking tours around Hayward with like a group of 50 people and show off all the things that are great. Like you would be good at it. You should do that and then give me credit when you start doing that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm already teaching a classroom full of kids, so just kind of correlate like a little field trip.
Yeah, dude.
Come with me around Hayward.
That's what I'm saying. The grown adult sorority and fraternity of Hayward, the temporary visitors.
Yes.
Well, yeah, dude, this was awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of The Passion Pod. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. We'll see you soon.